What if one summer could change everything? What if a grandmother's courage and 3 curious hearts could turn an ordinary vacation into an extraordinary adventure that would echo through generations? Welcome to Adopting Adventure, where love, laughter, and the open road collide in the most beautiful way possible. Buckle up, because this journey will make you laugh, cry, and remember why family matters most. Chapter 1: The Dream Awakens. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of Margaret's kitchen in Austin, Texas, painting golden stripes across her weathered oak table. At 64, Margaret still moved with the energy of someone half her age. Though her silver-streaked black hair and the gentle lines around her eyes told stories of a life well lived. She sat there, coffee growing cold in her favorite mug, the one that said, "World's Best Grandma," in Jake's messy handwriting, staring at her phone with an expression caught somewhere between longing and determination. It had been 8 months since David passed. 8 months of well-meaning neighbors bringing casseroles, 8 months of her daughter Rachel worrying too much, and 8 months of this house feeling far too big and far too quiet. Margaret wasn't the type to wallow. David wouldn't have wanted that. But she'd be lying if she said the silence didn't sometimes press against her chest like a physical weight. Then she saw it. A simple post on her Facebook feed, a family of 4 standing at the edge of Yellowstone's Grand Prismatic Spring, their faces lit with pure wonder. The caption read, "The best inheritance you can leave your grandchildren isn't money, it's memories." Something in Margaret's chest cracked open, and suddenly she could breathe again. "That's it," she whispered to the empty kitchen. "That's exactly it." She picked up her phone and dialed Rachel's number, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement. "Mom? Is everything okay? It's 7 in the morning. Better than okay, sweetheart. I need to borrow Jake, Ella, and Maya for the summer." There was a pause. Margaret could practically hear her daughter's confusion through the phone. Borrow them? A road trip. National parks. The open road. Real adventures. Margaret stood up, suddenly energized, pacing her kitchen like a general planning a campaign. "Rachel, when was the last time those kids did something that didn't involve a screen? When was the last time they felt dirt under their fingernails? Or saw stars without light pollution?" "Mom, that's a big undertaking. You're talking about weeks on the road with 3 kids under 10. The logistics alone are something I can handle." Margaret's voice was firm but gentle. "Rachel, honey, I love you, but you're overthinking this. Your father and I drove cross-country with you when you were 6. Remember? That beat-up station wagon, sleeping in campgrounds, eating sandwiches at scenic overlooks? Those were some of the best days of our lives." She could hear Rachel's breath catch, and Margaret knew she'd struck the right chord. Those old memories were precious to both of them. "Let me think about it," Rachel finally said. "I'll talk to Tom." 2 days later, Margaret's doorbell rang at 3 in the afternoon. She opened it to find all 3 of her grandchildren standing there, backpacks at their feet, faces split with enormous grins. Jake, her eldest at 10, was tall for his age with Rachel's dark eyes, and his father's serious demeanor. "Grandma, Mom says we're going on an adventure." His attempt at coolness crumbled as his voice cracked with excitement. Ella, 8 years old and pure dynamite in a small package, pushed past her brother. "Are we really going to sleep outside? Can we see bears? Will there be s'mores?" Her red curls bounced as she hopped from foot to foot. And little Maya, just 6, with her gap-toothed smile and David's gentle nature, held up a worn stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Hopscotch wants to see mountains, Grandma. Can he come too?" Margaret felt her eyes sting with happy tears. She knelt down, gathering all 3 into her arms. "Mr. Hopscotch is absolutely invited. And yes, Ella, there will be all the s'mores you can eat." Now, who's ready to help Grandma plan the greatest adventure of our lives? The next 2 weeks were a beautiful chaos. Margaret's dining room table disappeared under maps, brochures, and handwritten lists. Jake appointed himself chief navigator, spending hours with a highlighter marking potential routes. Ella created elaborate drawings of everything. She wanted to see her interpretation of the Grand Canyon looked more like a purple dragon's mouth, but Margaret loved it anyway. Maya was in charge of the snack inventory, a responsibility she took very seriously, frequently taste testing items, to make sure they're good enough for the adventure. Rachel came by often, ostensibly to help pack, but really to watch her mother come alive again. One evening, as they sorted camping gear in the garage, she caught Margaret humming an old tune David used to sing while doing dishes. "You seem happy, Mom," Rachel said softly. Margaret looked up, a sleeping bag half stuffed in her arms. "I am, sweetheart. For the first time in months, I feel like I have a purpose again. Those 3 beautiful children need memories, and I need to remember that there's still magic left in this world." "Dad would love this," Rachel whispered. "He's coming with us," Margaret said simply. "In every story I tell them, in every starry night, in every moment of wonder. He's already there." The night before departure, Margaret couldn't sleep. She walked through her quiet house, running her fingers over picture frames and worn furniture. In the living room, she paused at David's favorite chair, the leather recliner. He'd sat in every evening to read the newspaper. She'd kept it exactly as he'd left it. "Wish me luck, old man," she whispered into the darkness. "I'm about to take our legacy on the road." The next morning, Margaret's vintage 2015 Honda Pilot, lovingly nicknamed the Wanderer by David, sat in the driveway, packed to the brim. Coolers of drinks, bins of snacks, camping equipment, first aid kits, and enough spare clothes to outfit a small army filled every available space. Margaret had even installed a special organizer that hung from the front seats, with individual pockets for each child's treasures. Jake loaded his field journal and binoculars with the solemnity of an explorer preparing for Antarctica. Ella tucked her beloved camera, a gift from her father, into her special backpack, along with 17 different hair accessories for emergencies. Maya secured Mr. Hopscotch in the seat next to her, and arranged a small pile of picture books within easy reach. Rachel took approximately 400 photos, made Margaret promise to call every single night, and hugged each of her children at least a dozen times. Tom handed Jake a walkie-talkie set, in case you need to signal Grandma in an emergency. Margaret and Rachel exchanged knowing smiles. Tom had been wanting to buy those for months. Finally, at 8:47 a.m. on a perfect June morning, the Wanderer pulled out of the driveway, 3 small hands waving frantically out the windows, one grandmother's heart so full it felt like it might burst. "First stop, Big Bend National Park," Margaret announced. 450 miles of Texas highway between us and our first adventure. "Who's ready?" "We are," 3 voices shouted in unison. And just like that, everything changed. Call to action if you're loving Margaret's courage and excited to join this adventure. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. These 4 travelers are about to discover something extraordinary, and you won't want to miss a single moment. Drop a heart emoji in the comments if you're ready for this journey. Chapter 2: Big Bend and Bigger Hearts. The drive to Big Bend National Park was an education in patience, creativity, and just how many times 3 children could ask, "Are we there yet?" Margaret stopped counting at 37. But it was also filled with unexpected joy, impromptu sing-alongs to oldies radio, counting games that devolved into fits of giggles, and Maya's earnest observations about every cow they passed. "Grandma, why are some cows brown and some are black and white?" Maya asked from the back seat. Different breeds, sweetheart. Like how people come in all different colors and sizes. But we're all beautiful. Like how Ella's hair is curly and mine is straight. Exactly like that. Jake, ever the scholar, pulled out his field journal. Did you know there are over 800 cow breeds in the world? I read it in. Grandma, look, a windmill. Ella's shriek nearly caused Margaret to swerve. Can we stop, please? I need a photo. And so began the first of many unplanned stops. By the time they reached Big Bend late that afternoon, they'd documented 17 windmills. 3 roadside diners with the best chicken fried steak Margaret had ever tasted, 1 surprisingly philosophical gas station attendant, and a stunning field of wildflowers that made all of them fall silent with wonder. Big Bend National Park sprawled before them like another world. The Chizos Mountains rose in the distance. Their peaks painted purple and gold by the setting sun. The air smelled different here, cleaner. Somehow, spiced with creosote and possibility. Whoa, Jake breathed, his cool kid facade completely gone. It's like we drove to another planet. Their first campsite was a revelation. Margaret had splurged on a spot with a picnic table and a fire ring, and watching her grandchildren experience the ritual of setting up camp filled her with bittersweet joy. David should be here, she thought, teaching Jake how to hammer tent stakes properly. But then Jake figured it out himself, his face glowing with pride. And Margaret realized David was here, in the determination on Jake's face, in the problem-solving, in the way he patiently showed his sisters how to help. That night, they cooked hot dogs over the fire with Ella, insisting hers needed to be burned to a crisp for maximum marshmallow compatibility, told stories, and watched the stars emerge one by one, until the sky looked like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. Grandma? Maya whispered, cuddled close. Are those the same stars we see at home? The very same, honey. But out here, without all the city lights, we can see them like they really are, millions and millions of them. Grandpa's up there somewhere, Maya said matter-of-factly. Mommy told me heaven is in the sky. Margaret's throat tightened. Yes, sweetheart, I think he is. And I think he can see us right now. Probably smiling at what an excellent adventure we're having. I think he's proud we're being brave, Jake added quietly. Going places we've never been, not being scared. Oh, Jake. Margaret pulled him close. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing things even when you are scared. And you know what? Grandma's a little scared too. But having you 3 with me makes me feel like I can do anything. The next morning, they rose with the sun, which painted the mountains in shades of amber and rose. After a breakfast of slightly burned pancakes, Ella was helping. They set off on the Lost Mine Trail, a moderate hike that Jake had selected from the park map. The trail wound through the mountains, revealing new wonders at every turn. Margaret, despite her initial worry about keeping up, found herself invigorated by the kids' enthusiasm. Ella ran ahead, then back, then ahead again, her camera clicking constantly. Jake stopped frequently to sketch plants and rocks in his journal, asking Margaret questions she didn't always know the answers to. We'll look it up together tonight, became her favorite response. Maya moved at her own contemplative pace, stopping to examine every interesting pebble and talking to Mr. Hopscotch about the view. Look, a lizard, Ella squealed, nearly dropping her camera in excitement. They all crouched down to watch a greater earless lizard doing push-ups on a sun-warmed rock. Jake snapped photos while Ella recorded video, and Maya gently explained to Mr. Hopscotch why they couldn't take the lizard home as a pet. As they climbed higher, the vista opened up endless stretches of desert, punctuated by dramatic rock formations. The Rio Grande snaking through the valley below, Mexico visible in the distance. They stood at a scenic overlook, breathing hard but grinning. "This is the best day of my life," Maya announced. "Wait until tomorrow," Margaret laughed. "It might be even better." That afternoon, they visited the Chizos Basin, where they joined a ranger-led program about desert wildlife. The ranger, a weathered woman named Maria with eyes that crinkled kindly at the corners, captivated the children with stories of roadrunners, mountain lions, and the resilient plants that thrived in this harsh environment. Survival in the desert, Maria explained, is about adaptation. About being flexible, creative, and working together. Just like a family on an adventure. She winked at Margaret, who suddenly understood that this trip was teaching her as much as it was teaching the kids. That evening, Margaret made her promised phone call to Rachel, while the kids played cards at the picnic table. "Mom, you sound different," Rachel said. "Lighter somehow." "I feel different," Margaret admitted. "Rachel, I forgot what it was like to see the world through children's eyes. Everything is amazing to them. A lizard doing push-ups is cause for celebration. A good rock is treasure. They're teaching me how to wonder again. Are they behaving? They're being perfectly imperfect." Ella lost her favorite hairband and cried for 10 minutes. Then found it in her pocket and laughed for 20. Jake tried to act too cool for a ranger program. Then asked 17 questions and bought a field guide in the gift shop. Maya has named every large rock we've passed. "They're wonderful, Rachel. Absolutely wonderful." She could hear Rachel's smile through the phone. "Thanks for doing this, Mom. For them. For yourself." That night, their final night at Big Bend, Margaret taught them the art of s'mores. Not just making them, but perfecting them: the golden brown marshmallow, the chocolate melted just right, the graham cracker that didn't crumble at first bite. "Grandpa taught me this," she said, carefully rotating Ella's marshmallow over the flames. "He said the secret to a perfect s'more is patience. Don't rush the marshmallow. Let it heat slowly, turn it constantly, and wait for that perfect golden color. Then you squish it," Maya added helpfully. "Then you squish it," Margaret agreed, laughing. As they ate their treats, sticky-fingered and happy, Jake cleared his throat. "Grandma, can I read something?" He pulled out his journal and, by flashlight, read the entry he'd written that day. "Today, we climbed a mountain and I learned that hard things are worth doing. The view from the top was amazing, but what I'll remember most is Grandma stopping to catch her breath and saying, 'This is living, Jake. Really living.'" She had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. "I think Grandpa would be proud of us. I think he'd say we're doing a good job being brave together." Margaret couldn't speak. She just pulled all 3 children close, their faces sticky with marshmallow, their hearts full of starlight. And let the tears come: good tears, healing tears, grateful tears. "Tomorrow," she finally managed, "we drive to something unexpected. How would you feel about a little detour?" "Yes." 3 voices cheered in the darkness. "Call to action. Are you feeling the magic yet? This family is just getting started. Smash that like button if Margaret and her crew are warming your heart. And subscribe to follow every step of their incredible journey. Comment below what's your favorite family adventure memory. We'd love to hear it." Chapter 3: The Festival Surprise. The detour began with a wrong turn. Or rather, what Jake insisted was the correct interpretation of unclear signage. They'd been aiming for a direct route toward New Mexico, but somehow ended up on a farm road that wound through rolling hills, dotted with live oaks and the occasional longhorn steer. "I think we're lost," Ella announced cheerfully, always thrilled by unexpected developments. "We're not lost," Jake protested, his ears turning red. "We're exploring alternative routes." "We're lost," Margaret said with a grin, "and it's perfect. Look." She pointed to a hand-painted sign ahead, Bluebonnet Days Festival, today. Best barbecue in Texas. Live music. Fun for all ages. Turn right. A festival. Maya clapped her hands. Can we go, Grandma? Please, please, please? Margaret checked her watch. They'd been making good time anyway. And the truth was, she'd been feeling the weight of their schedule. One of the joys of retirement and summer vacation was having nowhere specific to be. Why rush? Festival it is, she declared, turning the wanderer toward adventure. The town of Bluebonnet Valley, population 2,847 according to the welcome sign, was exactly the kind of place that existed in Margaret's nostalgic memories of road trips. Past a main street lined with brick buildings, American flags hanging from lampposts, and what appeared to be the entire population gathered in the town square for their annual celebration. The festival sprawled across several blocks, booths selling everything from handmade soaps to artisan leather goods. A stage where a bluegrass band played enthusiastically if not always harmoniously, and most importantly, according to Ella's nose, an entire row dedicated to food vendors. Grandma, I smell approximately 17 different amazing things, Ella declared. I need to investigate immediately. They spent the first hour simply wandering, absorbing the atmosphere. Jake was fascinated by a booth where a man demonstrated blacksmithing, heating metal and shaping it into horseshoes with precise hammer strikes. Maya discovered a face painting station and emerged as a butterfly, her cheeks adorned with purple and blue wings. Ella made friends with approximately everyone, chatting with vendors, complimenting strangers on their dogs, and generally spreading joy like it was her job. Then they saw the sign, Annual Bluebonnet Valley Cooking Competition, registration open. Best family recipe wins $100. Grandma, Jake said slowly, his eyes lighting up. You should enter. Oh no, honey, I don't think. Grandma makes the best fried rice. Maya interrupted. She makes it with extra eggs and the vegetables that are like tiny trees. Broccoli, Jake supplied. And it's so good that Daddy says he'd eat it every day forever, Maya finished. But I don't have any of my ingredients, or my wok, or... Excuse me? A woman approached, wearing a volunteer t-shirt and carrying a clipboard. Her name tag read, Loretta, Festival Coordinator. She had kind eyes and smile lines that suggested she laughed often. Did I hear you folks talking about entering the competition? We've had a last-minute cancellation and we'd love to have you. I don't know, Margaret hesitated. I'm not really a competitive cook. I just make food my family enjoys. That's exactly what this competition is about, Loretta said warmly. Sharing food that brings people together. We provide basic ingredients and equipment. And you make whatever speaks to your heart. What do you say? 3 pairs of pleading eyes turned to Margaret. Well, she heard herself saying, I suppose it could be fun. An hour later, Margaret found herself at a cooking station under a white tent, surrounded by 5 other competitors and their families, with her 3 grandchildren acting as what Jake officially termed her sous chef team. The rules were simple: 1 hour to prepare a dish that represented your family's heritage or tradition, using provided ingredients supplemented by 3 secret ingredients of your choice. Judging would be based on taste, presentation, and the story behind the dish. Margaret's hands trembled slightly as she surveyed the ingredients. She'd decided to make her grandmother's recipe for fried rice with a Texas twist, something David had always loved. But could she do it without her own kitchen? Her own tools, her own familiar space? Grandma? Jake touched her arm gently. You've got this. Tell us what to do. Something steadied in Margaret's chest. Okay, she said, rolling up her sleeves. Jake, I need you to rinse rice in that colander until the water runs clear. Ella, we need vegetables chopped. Can you handle that with supervision? Maya, you're my taste tester and ingredient fetcher. What followed was organized chaos. Margaret worked with her usual grace, but everything took longer with unfamiliar equipment. Then Jake accidentally used sesame oil instead of vegetable oil. And for a moment, Margaret's confidence wavered. But Ella said, "Grandpa always said mistakes are just unexpected flavors waiting to be discovered." And Margaret realized her granddaughter was right. She adjusted the recipe, adding extra ginger to balance the sesame, throwing in some jalapenos from the Texas ingredient station, and incorporating some fresh cilantro she'd spotted. The rice transformed, becoming something new but still fundamentally familiar. The neighboring cooking station was occupied by a Mexican-American family, grandmother Rosa, her daughter Carmen, and grandson Miguel, who was Jake's age. They were making tamales, and the kitchen filled with the warm scent of masa and chili. "First time in a cooking competition?" Rosa called over with a knowing smile. "Is it that obvious?" Margaret laughed. "Only because you look terrified and determined in equal measure. That's the look of someone doing something scary and important." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron. "What are you making?" As they cooked, Margaret and Rosa talked about food, about family, about the courage it takes to try new things at any age. Rosa shared the story of her tamale recipe, passed down through 5 generations, each woman adding her own touch. Margaret told her about David, about this trip, about learning to live again. "You know what I think?" Rosa said, her hands never stopping their efficient work. "I think food is how we keep people alive. Your husband lives in every dish you cook, every recipe you teach these beautiful children. He's right here, in this tent, in this fried rice." Margaret's eyes stung with tears, but they were good tears. "Thank you," she whispered. When time was called, Margaret plated her creation. Texas fusion fried rice with sesame ginger flavor, topped with a perfectly fried egg, garnished with fresh cilantro and a side of pickled jalapenos. It wasn't what she'd originally planned, but it was beautiful. The judging took 30 minutes. 3 local judges, including the town's mayor, a food blogger, and a restaurant owner, tasted each dish, taking notes, asking questions about the recipe's origins and significance. When they got to Margaret, she told them about her grandmother in San Francisco, about teaching the recipe to David, about making it every Friday night for her daughter, and now about sharing it with her grandchildren on this crazy, wonderful adventure. "The mistake my grandson made with the sesame oil," she said, "actually made it better. It taught me that sometimes the best things come from embracing the unexpected. This trip standing here with these 3 amazing kids is all about that. Choosing adventure over fear, community over isolation, and love over loss." Maya tugged on the judge's sleeve. "Also, it's really yummy. I helped taste test." Everyone laughed, and Margaret felt something release in her chest, the last bit of fear she'd been carrying. They didn't win first place. That honor went to Rosa's family and their incredible tamales. But Margaret's Texas fusion fried rice won Most Creative Recipe and People's Choice Award, determined by festival goers who'd sampled dishes after judging. "We won!" Ella shrieked, jumping up and down. "Grandma, we won." "You won because you were brave," Jake said seriously, handing her the ribbon. "You did something scary." The evening ended with all the competing families sharing their food, sitting together at picnic tables, while the bluegrass band played and fireflies began to dance in the twilight. Rosa's family and Margaret's crew bonded instantly, the children running off to play while the adults talked. "You know," Rosa said, passing Margaret a tamale, "you're giving those kids something priceless. Not just this trip, but the memory of a grandmother who chose to really live. My grandmother did that for me. She was 72 when she learned to swim, so she could take me to the beach. Best summer of my childhood. I'm 64 and I just competed in my first cooking competition." Margaret laughed. "If you'd told me 3 months ago I'd be doing this, I'd never have believed it." "That's what life is supposed to be," Rosa said. "Surprising yourself." That night, in their hotel room, Margaret had decided camping could wait a day. The children were too excited to sleep. They sat on the beds, eating leftover festival cookies, replaying every moment of the day. When I grow up, Ella announced, I'm going to be a professional food festival person. I'll travel around trying all the competitions. I'm going to be a chef, Maya added, and make food that brings people together like Grandma does. Jake was quiet, then said, I'm just going to try to be brave like Grandma. To do things even when they're scary. Margaret's heart could barely contain all the love she felt. You know what I learned today? She asked. That it's never too late to try something new. That mistakes can become magic. And that the best adventures are the ones we never planned. She pulled out her phone and called Rachel, putting it on speaker. So the kids could share every detail of their unexpected festival triumph. A cooking competition? Rachel laughed. Mom, you barely entered the pie contest at the church bake sale. That was the old Margaret, Margaret said with a grin. The new Margaret does unexpected things. Wait until you hear what we're doing tomorrow. Call to action. Is your heart smiling yet? Hit that like button if you're cheering for Margaret and her fearless crew. Subscribe now because trust me, this adventure is about to take an unexpected turn. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to be brave. Chapter 4 When Plans Change. 3 days later, somewhere in the high desert between Albuquerque and Flagstaff, the wanderer began to make a sound that Margaret can only describe as mechanically disgruntled. Grandma? Jake's voice held the careful tone of someone trying not to cause panic. Is the car supposed to sound like that? That in question was a rhythmic clicking accompanied by occasional wheezing, as if the wanderer was trying to tell them something in Morse code, while simultaneously having an asthma attack. I'm sure it's fine, Margaret said with more confidence than she felt, checking the dashboard. Every light that should be on was on. Several lights she'd never seen before were also illuminated, creating what could only be described as a festive but concerning display. Grandma, Ella piped up from the backseat, remember when Daddy's car made a funny noise? And Mommy said, that doesn't sound fine, and then it died? Thank you for that helpful memory, sweetheart. 10 minutes later, the wanderer gave a final, definitive wheeze and rolled to a stop on the shoulder of Highway 40. Surrounded by nothing but spectacular desert landscape and absolutely zero cell phone signal. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Maya said, in a very small voice, are we going to die out here like in that movie? Daddy watches where everyone is really thirsty. No one is dying, Margaret said firmly, though her heart was beating faster than she'd like. She turned to face her grandchildren, determined to model calmness. We are simply having an adventure. A different kind of adventure than planned, but still an adventure. What do we do? Jake asked, and Margaret heard the worry in his voice. He was trying so hard to be grown up, to be the man of the trip. We problem solve, Margaret said. First, everyone out of the car. Grab water bottles and hats. We'll set up our emergency camp right here and figure this out. What happened next would become one of the trip's most treasured stories. With no cell service and no visible help on the horizon, Margaret and her crew did what humans have done for millennia. They adapted. Using the car's shade and their camping tarp, they created a shelter from the intense sun. Jake remembered the emergency kit and pulled out the reflective blanket, which they hung as a signal flag. Ella, ever the documentarian, decided this was worth recording, and began interviewing everyone about their desert survival experience with her camera. How do you feel about our situation? She asked Maya, shoving the camera close to her sister's face. I think Mr. Hopscotch is very brave, Maya responded seriously. He says not to worry because Grandma always knows what to do. Margaret, checking the wanderer's engine. with absolutely no idea what she was looking for. Overheard this and felt the weight of responsibility mixed with determination. These kids believed in her. She wouldn't let them down. "Okay, team," she announced, slamming the hood. "We're going to be here for a while. We can either spend this time worrying, or we can spend it making memories." "What's it going to be?" "Memories," 3 voices chorused, though Jake's was slightly less enthusiastic. What followed were 3 hours that none of them would ever forget. They played elaborate games of I spy something. Beige. Is it literally everything around us? Yes. They held a rock painting competition using Margaret's nail polish as paint. They built the world's smallest sandcastle. More of a sand cottage really, complete with a flag made from a gum wrapper. Ella interviewed passing lizards for her documentary. Maya arranged rocks into elaborate patterns and named each one. The extended family included Boulder Sr., Rocky Johnson, and the Pebble formerly known as Prince. Jake, after his initial worry subsided, pulled out his journal and began writing what he called, "Our Desert Survival Guide for Future Adventurers." Around hour 2, Margaret gathered them into the shade and said, "You know what? I need to tell you guys something important." 3 pairs of eyes focused on her. "I'm really proud of you. Not just for being patient right now, but for this whole trip. Jake, you've stepped up as our navigator and problem solver. Ella, you've reminded us to see joy in everything, even when things go wrong. And Maya, you've taught us that even stuffed rabbits can be brave explorers. But more than that, you've taught me that it's okay when things don't go according to plan." "Really?" Jake asked. "Because I thought you were probably stressed." Margaret laughed. "Oh, I'm definitely stressed. But I'm also happy. Because look at us, we're sitting in the desert. Our car is broken, we have no cell service, and somehow we're having fun. That's resilience. That's what your grandpa always tried to teach me, that life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." "Did he really say that?" Ella asked. "No, that was John Lennon. But Grandpa would have agreed with it." Around hour 3, when they were starting to discuss their remaining snacks and water situation more seriously, a truck appeared on the horizon. As it got closer, they could see it was a vintage Ford F-150, turquoise blue, with a camper shell. The truck pulled up behind them, and out stepped a woman who looked to be in her mid-50s, with sun-weathered skin, long silver braids, and a smile that took up half her face. A large golden retriever bounded out after her. "Well now," she said in a drawl that spoke of decades in the Southwest. "Looks like y'all could use some help." Her name was June, and she was what she called a professional wanderer, a travel nurse who lived out of her truck, taking short-term assignments around the country and exploring in between. The golden retriever was named Tuesday, because that's the day I found him at a shelter. And it seemed meant to be. June took one look under the wanderer's hood and said, "Cooling system failure. Seen it 100 times. Good news is, it's fixable. Bad news is, you're about 40 miles from the nearest mechanic. And it's too hot to risk driving it." Margaret's heart sank. "So what do we do?" "Well," June said, already pulling out her phone. "I've got signal with my satellite setup. We call a tow truck, they haul your car to Hermosa Valley, that's the nearest town, and I give you folks a ride. You'll be at a nice hotel with a pool by dinner time." "You'd do that for strangers?" Margaret asked, incredulous. June laughed. "Honey, there's no such thing as strangers out here. There's just family you haven't met yet. Besides," she nodded at the kids, who were already asking if they could pet Tuesday. "Anybody traveling with kids this well-behaved deserves all the help they can get." The tow truck took 2 hours to arrive. But it didn't matter because June was a master storyteller. She regaled them with tales of her travels, the summer she spent in Alaska, the winter in Key West. The time she accidentally joined a mariachi band in Arizona and performed at a wedding despite not speaking Spanish or knowing how to play any instruments. Enthusiasm counts for a lot, she assured them. Why do you live in your truck? Maya asked with the directness only 6-year-olds possess. Because the world is huge and beautiful and I want to see as much of it as I can before my time is up, June said simply. Because I'd rather collect experiences than things. Because I learned a long time ago that the best stories come from the moments when plans fall apart. She caught Margaret's eye and winked. In June's truck, with Tuesday's head on, Maya's lap and the Wanderer being hauled behind them, they drove toward Hermosa Valley as the sun began its descent. June pointed out geological formations, taught them the names of desert plants, and explained how to identify different types of clouds. You're good with kids, Margaret observed quietly while the children were absorbed in watching the landscape. I had 3 of my own, June said. Lost my husband young, raised them solo, and once they were grown. I realized I'd spent 20 years putting dreams on hold. So I stopped holding them. Started living them instead. Do you ever get lonely? Sometimes, June admitted. But I've learned that loneliness and solitude are different things. Solitude is peaceful. Loneliness is painful. And you know what I've discovered? When you open yourself up to the world, when you say yes to adventure, you're never really alone. People show up, like you folks showed up on the highway today, giving me a chance to help and share stories. I needed to hear that, Margaret said softly. Hermosa Valley turned out to be a small but charming town with exactly 1 mechanic, 2 restaurants, and much to everyone's relief 1 hotel with a pool. The mechanic, a man named Eddie with kind eyes and grease-stained hands, looked over the Wanderer and confirmed it would take 2 days to get the parts and complete the repair. 2 days? Jake looked stricken. But our schedule, honey, Margaret said, pulling him close. Remember what Grandpa always said? We make plans so God can laugh. We're going to be just fine. June, who'd insisted on staying to make sure they were settled, patted Jake's shoulder. Kid, some of the best adventures are the ones that find you when you're stuck somewhere you didn't plan to be. Trust me on this. She was right. Over the next 2 days in Hermosa Valley, they discovered magic they never would have found otherwise. The hotel owner, Mrs. Chen, no relation to Margaret, but they joked about being long-lost cousins, treated them like family. Her daughter Clara, home from college, became Ella's new best friend, and taught all 3 kids to make friendship bracelets, while sharing stories about growing up in a small town. Eddie the mechanic let Jake and Maya help with the car, patiently explaining what he was doing and why. My grandfather taught me everything I know, he told them. Said machines are like people, treat them with respect. Learn their language and they'll take care of you. The local library, run by an enthusiastic woman named Patricia, who seemed to know everything about everything, hosted the kids for story time and let them check out books with a special traveler's card. Maya discovered a love for astronomy books. Jake found a field guide to Southwest geology. Ella charmed everyone and got a behind-the-scenes tour of Patricia's office. Margaret found herself at the town's small cafe each morning, drinking coffee with a rotating cast of locals who welcomed her like she'd always been there. She heard stories about the town's history, learned about the annual Hermosa Valley Rodeo, and found herself laughing more freely than she had in months. On their second evening, they received an invitation to dinner at Eddie's house, where his wife Maria, not the same Maria from Big Bend, but equally wonderful, cooked an incredible meal, and the entire family, including Eddie's parents and his 3 kids, gathered around a table that somehow fit everyone. This is how we do things here, Eddie explained. Someone needs help, we help. Someone needs company, we share our table. Simple as that. As they drove away 2 days later, The wanderer humming contentedly with her new parts, Margaret realized something profound. They'd lost 2 days of scheduled travel but gained something far more valuable, a reminder that the best things in life aren't planned. They're found in broken-down cars, generous strangers, and small towns that feel like home. "Grandma?" Jake said from the back seat. "I'm glad the car broke down." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Call to action. Are you starting to see why this journey is so special? Hit that subscribe button if you're falling in love with this adventure as much as we are. Like this video. If broken down cars and unexpected kindness are giving you all the feels, drop a comment. What's the best thing that ever happened to you? When plans went wrong. Chapter 5, the grand finale. The Grand Canyon announced itself gradually. First, the landscape changed. Ponderosa pines appearing where desert had been, the air cooling and freshening. Then came the signs, each one increasing the excitement in the wanderer until the kids were practically vibrating with anticipation. "How much longer?" Maya asked for the 100th time. 15 minutes, Margaret said, smiling at the question that had once annoyed her and now felt like a treasured part of their trip. "I'm going to see it first," Ella declared. "I claim first seeing rights." "That's not a thing," Jake protested. But he was leaning forward too, eager for that first glimpse. Margaret had saved the Grand Canyon for last deliberately. After 3 weeks on the road, after national parks and small towns and broken-down cars and cooking competitions, she wanted to end with something that would take their breath away. Something worthy of concluding their adventure. She wasn't disappointed. Even Margaret, who'd seen the Grand Canyon twice before, gasped when they reached the rim. Some things are so magnificent that no amount of prior experience prepares you for the reality of them. The canyon stretched before them in impossible dimensions, layers of ancient rock, painted in shades of red, orange, purple, and gold, carved over millions of years by the patient work of water and time. The Colorado River, a ribbon of green, impossibly far below, snaked through the depths. The scale was so massive it seemed to exist in a different reality than their small human selves. For 5 full minutes, nobody spoke. They just stood there, 4 people holding hands, trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. Finally, Maya whispered, "Mr. Hopscotch says it's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen." "Mr. Hopscotch is right," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. They spent that first day simply experiencing walking along the rim trail, stopping at viewpoints, taking approximately 800 photos, Ella's camera estimate, and reading every educational sign. Jake filled pages in his journal with sketches and facts. Ella interviewed strangers about their reactions to the canyon. For her documentary, Maya collected pine cones and special rocks, creating what she called her Canyon Memory Collection. That evening, they attended a ranger program where a naturalist named Robert explained the canyon's geology with such passion that even Margaret, who'd never been particularly interested in rocks, found herself captivated. "Every layer you see," Robert explained, pointing at the canyon walls, represents millions of years of Earth's history. The rocks at the bottom are almost 2 billion years old. When you look at the Grand Canyon, you're literally looking at time itself. "Whoa," Jake breathed. "So when we're looking down there, we're seeing like ancient history?" "Exactly. And here's what amazes me every single day: human history, all of recorded civilization, is just a tiny fraction of one of those layers. We're so small. Our lives are so brief. But we're here, right now, able to witness this. Isn't that incredible?" Margaret felt tears sting her eyes. David should be here, she thought automatically, but then she corrected herself. David was here, in every moment of wonder, in every laugh. From her grandchildren, in the courage that had brought them all to this place. He was here, That night, their last night of the trip, Margaret splurged on a lodge room with a canyon view. They ordered room service and ate on the balcony as the sun set, painting the canyon in colors that seemed too vivid to be real, oranges and reds and purples so intense. They looked like something from a dream. "Grandma?" Ella said softly. "This has been the best summer of my whole life." "Mine too," Jake added. "Mine three," Maya said, because she always had to be slightly different. Margaret's throat tightened. "You know what, sweet ones? It's been the best summer of my life too. And I'm 64 years old, so I've had a lot of summers to compare it to." "Why do you think it was so good?" Jake asked, his analytical mind always seeking understanding. Margaret thought about it. "I think it's because we let ourselves be surprised. We made plans, but we didn't let plans control us. We said yes to unexpected things. We were brave together. And most importantly, we remembered that the journey matters just as much as the destination." "Like when the car broke down," Maya said. "Exactly like that. If we'd been so focused on getting here on schedule, we would have missed Eddie and Maria and Hermosa Valley. We would have missed June and Tuesday. We would have missed learning that sometimes the best things in life are the detours." "Is that a metaphor?" Ella asked. "It is, honey. But it's also just true." The next morning, their final morning, Margaret woke at dawn. She carefully extracted herself from the bed. Maya had somehow ended up sleeping sideways, one foot on Margaret's pillow, and stepped onto the balcony. The canyon at sunrise was ethereal. Mist rose from its depths as the first rays of sun caught the eastern rim, gradually illuminating the vast space in waves of color and light. Margaret stood there, breathing deeply, trying to memorize this moment. "Grandma?" She turned to find Jake beside her, wrapped in a blanket, hair sticking up in every direction. "Did I wake you?" "I'm sorry, honey." "No. I wanted to see the sunrise." He moved beside her, and they stood together in comfortable silence. Then Jake said, "Thank you." "For what, sweetheart?" "For this trip. For being brave. For showing us that it's okay to be sad about Grandpa, but also okay to still have adventures and be happy." He leaned against her. "Mom was really worried about you. I heard her and Dad talking. They thought you were stuck in being sad." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I was stuck, Jake. And this trip, having you three with me, it unstuck me. You gave me a reason to be brave again." "I think you and Grandpa are still having adventures," Jake said thoughtfully. "Just different kinds. Like you're having them here, and he's having them wherever he is. And maybe somehow you're both still together." Margaret pulled him close. "You know what, Jake? I think you're absolutely right." One by one, the girls woke and joined them on the balcony. As the canyon fully revealed itself in the morning light, Margaret felt David's presence more strongly than she had since his death. Not sad presence or ghost presence, but the warmth of knowing that love doesn't end, it just changes form. "Grandpa would have loved this," Ella said softly. "He does love it," Margaret corrected gently. "I believe that with all my heart. And I believe he's proud of us for doing this." For their final adventure, they hiked the Bright Angel Trail, not all the way down, that would take days, but far enough to feel like they'd truly entered the canyon. The trail descended steeply, switchbacking down the canyon wall, each turn revealing new perspectives. They passed mule trains carrying supplies to the bottom. They stopped to drink from water stations and talked to fellow hikers. They watched a raven soar below them, which seemed impossible but was happening. At a rest stop called Mile and a Half Rest House, they shared sandwiches and reflected on their journey. "So what did we learn this summer?" Margaret asked, echoing a question Rachel had asked them every year after their first day of school. "That marshmallows are better burned," Ella said immediately. Everyone laughed. "What else?" "That strangers can become friends really fast," Maya offered. That when things go wrong, they sometimes go even more right, Jake added. Like with the car. That grandma is the bravest person in the world, Ella said. Oh, honey, I'm not. You are, Jake insisted. You lost Grandpa and it hurt so much, but you didn't stay stuck in the hurt. You chose to do something scary and amazing. That's what brave means. Margaret couldn't speak. She just gathered them all close, there on a trail, hanging on the side of the Grand Canyon, and let herself feel everything: the grief and the joy, the fear and the courage. The ending and the beginning, all woven together into something that felt like hope. They climbed back up slowly, stopping frequently to rest and admire the view. The return journey was harder every step an upward climb, but somehow that felt right. Good things require effort. Growth is hard. But the view from the top makes every difficult step worthwhile. That evening, they had their goodbye dinner at a lodge restaurant. And Margaret pulled out a surprise. A scrapbook she'd been secretly assembling throughout the trip. She'd printed photos at drugstores in various towns, collected napkins and receipts and ticket stubs, and put together a chronicle of their adventure. Each child got their own page to decorate with mementos they'd collected. Jake added his favorite sketches from his journal. Ella included printed stills from her documentary footage. Maya carefully glued in her best rocks, much flatter ones than she'd originally wanted to keep, and wrote captions in her careful first-grade printing. This is so we never forget, Margaret explained. Not just the big moments, but the little ones. The rest stops and the wrong turns. The conversations in the car. The laughter. All of it matters. All of it counts. Will you write something in it? Jake asked. Something we can read when we're older? Margaret took a deep breath and wrote on the final page. To Jake, Ella, and Maya. This summer, you saved me. You reminded me that life is meant to be lived, not just survived. You showed me that courage comes in small packages. 3 of them, in fact, and that the best adventures are the ones we take together. I want you to remember you are capable of more than you know. You are braver than you feel. You are loved beyond measure. And no matter where life takes you, no matter what challenges you face, you carry with you the magic of this summer, the knowledge that with love, courage, and each other, you can handle anything. Thank you for this adventure. Thank you for choosing wonder. Thank you for making an old woman feel young again. All my love, forever and always, Grandma. P.S. Grandpa is proud of you. I know it absolutely. They read it together, passing the scrapbook around, and when they finished, Maya climbed into Margaret's lap and said, Can we do this again next summer? Margaret laughed through her tears. Absolutely. Where should we go? Everywhere, Ella said dreamily. Everywhere sounds perfect. Their final morning at the Grand Canyon. They returned to the rim for one last look. The sun was bright, the sky impossibly blue, and the canyon spread before them in all its ancient glory. Thank you, Margaret whispered to the canyon, to the sky. To David, to the universe. Thank you for this. As they walked back to the Wanderer, preparing for the long drive home to Austin, Jake said, Grandma? I don't think adventures ever really end. I think they just turn into stories we carry with us. You know what, Jake? You're absolutely right. And we just made one heck of a story. The drive home was different from the drive out. They were different. Margaret felt it in the way she held the steering wheel, more confident, more purposeful. She saw it in the way the children looked out the windows, not just seeing but truly observing, wondering, learning. They stopped at June's favorite truck stop. She'd recommended it, and they'd promised to visit. They sent photos to Eddie and Maria, to Rosa and her family, to Loretta from the festival. They'd collected more than memories, they'd collected family, scattered across the Southwest. Proof that kindness and connection were everywhere if you were brave enough to look. When they finally pulled into Rachel's driveway in Austin, the sun was setting, painting the sky. The same colors they'd seen over the Grand Canyon. Rachel came running out, followed by Tom. And the reunion was a tangle of hugs and tears and everyone talking over each other. "You look different, Mom," Rachel said, holding Margaret at arm's length. "Lighter. Happier. I feel different," Margaret admitted. "I feel like myself again. But better. Braver." That night, as they all sat around Rachel's kitchen table, Margaret, Rachel, Tom, and 3 exhausted but glowing children sharing stories and passing around the scrapbook, Margaret realized something profound. She'd started this trip thinking she was giving her grandchildren an adventure. What she'd discovered was that they'd been giving her one all along. They'd taught her to see wonder in small things, to find joy in wrong turns, to embrace the unexpected, to believe in beginnings even when things feel like endings. David was gone, and that loss would always be part of her. But sitting here, surrounded by family and love and evidence of courage, Margaret understood that grief and joy could coexist, that endings made room for new beginnings, that it was possible to honor the past while still embracing the future. "So," Tom said, grinning at the children, "where to next summer?" 3 voices erupted in simultaneous suggestions: Alaska, Hawaii, New York City, the mountains, the beach, everywhere. Margaret laughed, the sound full and rich and alive. "How about we decide together?" she said. "The 5 of us. We'll make a plan, and then we'll probably change it a dozen times. And it will be absolutely perfect." As the evening wound down and the children's voices grew softer with exhaustion, Margaret stepped outside into the warm Texas night. She looked up at the stars, the same stars they'd watched from Big Bend, from the desert roadside, from the Grand Canyon rim. "We did it," she whispered to David. "And you know what? We're going to keep doing it. Keep choosing adventure. Keep being brave. Keep living." The stars twinkled in response, and Margaret could have sworn she felt David smiling. Inside, she could hear Ella telling Rachel about the cooking competition. Jake was already planning next summer's route with Tom. Maya was falling asleep on the couch, Mr. Hopscotch still clutched in her arms. This was it, Margaret thought. This was what David would have wanted. Not for her to stay frozen in the moment of his leaving, but to keep moving forward. Collecting moments, making memories, teaching their grandchildren about courage and love. And the beautiful unpredictability of life. She took one last look at the stars, one last deep breath of the warm night air, and went back inside to her family. The adventure was over. The adventure was just beginning. Final call to action. Thank you for joining Margaret and her incredible grandchildren on this unforgettable journey. If this story touched your heart, moved your spirit, or reminded you why family and adventure matter, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder to be brave, to choose adventure, to really live. And in the comments, tell us, what adventure will you choose? We can't wait to hear your stories. Until next time, keep wondering, and keep making memories that last forever.